The Miracle on Ice, USA vs. Soviet Union, 1980 Winter Olympics. The 1980 Winter Olympics hockey game between the United States and the Soviet Union stands as the most famous game in ice hockey history. The Soviet team had dominated international hockey for decades, winning 4 consecutive Olympic gold medals and entering the Lake Placid Games as heavy favorites. The American team, on the other hand, was composed mainly of amateur and collegiate players, with an average age of just 22. The game's significance stemmed not only from the sporting challenge, but also from the political climate of the Cold War, making the clash symbolic beyond the rink. The game followed standard Olympic ice hockey rules: 3 20-minute periods, 6 players per side, and strict penalties for infractions. The Soviets scored first, but the Americans kept pace, tying the game twice before taking the lead in the third period. Goaltender Jim Craig made 36 saves, helping the US secure a 4-3 victory. This game is credited with elevating ice hockey's popularity in America and is often cited as the greatest upset in sports history. The 1994 Stanley Cup Finals, Game 7, New York Rangers vs. Vancouver Canucks. The 1994 Stanley Cup Finals reached a dramatic climax in Game 7 between the New York Rangers and the Vancouver Canucks. The Stanley Cup is the ultimate championship in the National Hockey League, NHL, contested through a best-of-7 series. Each team in the finals had won 3 games, setting up a decisive final game at Madison Square Garden in New York. The Rangers were seeking their first Stanley Cup in 54 years, intensifying the stakes for both players and fans. NHL rules for the finals are consistent with regular season play, but feature longer overtime periods in case of a tie. Each period lasts 20 minutes with 5 skaters plus a goaltender per team on the ice. The game began with high intensity as both teams pushed to gain an early advantage. The Rangers built a 3-1 lead through disciplined defense and strategic offensive plays. Despite a late goal by the Canucks, the Rangers held on to win 3-2. Goalie Mike Richter's crucial saves and captain Mark Messier's leadership were key factors. The victory ended one of the longest championship droughts in NHL history and remains one of the league's most memorable games. The 1971 Stanley Cup Finals, Game 7, Montreal Canadiens vs. Chicago Blackhawks. Game 7 of the 1971 Stanley Cup Finals between the Montreal Canadiens and the Chicago Blackhawks is remembered for its intense competition and pivotal moments. The Stanley Cup Finals follow a best-of-7 format, and in 1971, both teams were tied at 3 wins each. The final game was played at Chicago Stadium, with both teams under immense pressure to secure the championship. During the game, teams rotated 3 forward lines and 2 sets of defensemen to maintain player stamina. The Blackhawks took an early 2-0 lead, leveraging home ice advantage and a fast-paced attack. However, the Canadiens adjusted their strategy in the second period. Goaltender Ken Dryden, a rookie, made several key saves, preventing Chicago from extending their lead. Montreal's offense, led by players like Henri Richard, scored 3 unanswered goals. In the third period, disciplined defensive play and crucial face-off wins allowed the Canadiens to hold on for a 3-2 victory. This win secured the Canadiens' 17th Stanley Cup and established Ken Dryden as a legendary goaltender. The 2009 Stanley Cup Finals, Game 7, Pittsburgh Penguins vs. Detroit Red Wings. The 2009 Stanley Cup Finals featured a rare back-to-back rematch between the Pittsburgh Penguins and the Detroit Red Wings. Game 7 took place at Detroit's Joe Louis Arena, with the series tied 3-3. NHL Finals rules require a team to win 4 games to claim the championship, and if the deciding game is tied after regulation, sudden death overtime determines the winner. Each period is 20 minutes, with teams alternating shifts to maintain player energy. In this game, the Red Wings were defending champions and favored to win on home ice. However, the Penguins capitalized on key opportunities, with goaltender Marc-Andre Fleury making critical saves throughout the game. Max Talbot scored both Pittsburgh goals, providing a 2-0 lead going into the final period. Detroit pressed relentlessly, scoring once to cut the deficit. In the closing seconds, Fleury blocked a close-range shot from Nicklas Lidstrom, securing a 2-1 victory for Pittsburgh. The Penguins became only the 3rd team to win a Game 7 Stanley Cup final on the road. Sidney Crosby, the Penguins captain, became the youngest NHL captain to hoist the Stanley Cup at age 21. The 2010 Olympic Olympic gold medal game, Canada vs. USA. The 2010 Olympic gold medal ice hockey game between Canada and the United States is often described as one of the most dramatic games in international hockey. Held in Vancouver, this final followed the International Ice Hockey Federation (IHF) rules. 3 20-minute periods, sudden death overtime if tied, and a shootout as a last resort. Both teams had advanced through the Olympic tournament by defeating top international squads, setting up a North American showdown. Throughout the game, the pace was relentless, with each side employing physical defense, rapid line changes, and tactical power plays. Canada led 2-1 late in the third period, but with just 24 seconds left, USA's Zach Parise scored, tying the game and forcing overtime. Overtime in Olympic play is sudden death, with the first team to score winning gold. 7 minutes into overtime, Sidney Crosby of Canada received a pass and shot the puck past USA goalie Ryan Miller, scoring the golden goal. The victory was Canada's 8th Olympic gold in men's hockey and cemented Crosby's place in hockey history. The game is widely regarded as a classic for its intensity, skill, and dramatic conclusion. The 1996 World Cup of Hockey Final, USA vs. Canada. The 1996 World Cup of Hockey brought together the best players from top hockey nations, using NHL rules such as 3 20-minute periods, 5 skaters plus 1 goaltender per team, and sudden death overtime in elimination rounds. The final was a best-of-3 series between the United States and Canada, held in Montreal and then in the USA. The series was tied 1-1 before the decisive third game in Montreal. In the final game, both teams employed high-tempo offense and physical checking, reflecting their intense rivalry. Canada took a 2-1 lead into the third period, but the USA staged a dramatic comeback. Goals by Brett Hull and Tony Amonte shifted momentum, while goaltender Mike Richter made a series of crucial saves. The USA scored 4 unanswered goals in the third period, winning 5-2 and capturing their first World Cup of Hockey title. This victory marked a turning point for American ice hockey, demonstrating that US teams could defeat Canadian squads on the international stage and contributing to the growth of hockey in the United States. The 2013 Stanley Cup Finals, Game 6, Chicago Blackhawks vs. Boston Bruins. Game 6 of the 2013 Stanley Cup Finals between the Chicago Blackhawks and the Boston Bruins is famous for its astonishing finish. NHL rules for the finals are consistent. 3 20-minute periods with sudden death overtime if needed. The Blackhawks led the series 3-2, meaning a win would clinch the cup, while the Bruins needed a victory to force a Game 7. The game was held at Boston's TD Garden, with both teams utilizing aggressive forechecking and disciplined defensive structures. Boston took a 2-1 lead into the final minutes of the third period, relying on strong goaltending from Tuukka Rask and timely blocked shots. With just 1 minute and 16 seconds left in regulation, Chicago pulled their goalie for an extra attacker. Brian Bickle tied the game with a closer range goal, capitalizing on a scramble in front of the net. 17 seconds later, Dave Ballin scored the go-ahead goal after a face-off win and quick transition play. Chicago's back-to-back goals are among the fastest in Stanley Cup Finals history, securing a 3-2 victory and the Blackhawks' second championship in 4 years. This rapid comeback is regarded as one of the most shocking and dramatic endings in NHL playoff history. The 1999 Stanley Cup Finals, Game 6, Dallas Stars vs. Buffalo Sabres. The 1999 Stanley Cup Finals, Game 6 between the Dallas Stars and the Buffalo Sabres is remembered for its controversial ending. The series was played under NHL playoff rules. 3 20-minute periods, and if tied, sudden death overtime periods are played until a goal is scored. The Stars led the series 3-2, needing one more win for their first championship. The game took place at Buffalo's Marine Midland Arena and remained tied 1-1 after regulation. In overtime, both teams played cautiously, focusing on defense and limiting high-risk plays, knowing that a single mistake would end the game and possibly the series. The game extended into a third overtime, making it one of the longest finals games in NHL history. At 14:51 of the third overtime, Dallas's Brett Hull scored the winning goal while standing in the goal crease, ending the game 2-1. The goal sparked immediate controversy because NHL rules at the time disallowed goals if an attacking player's skate was in the crease before the puck. Officials ruled Hull had possession, allowing the goal to stand, and Dallas won their first Stanley Cup. The no-goal debate remains one of the most talked about moments in NHL history. The 1987 Canada Cup Final, Game 3, Canada vs. Soviet Union. The 1987 Canada Cup Final between Canada and the Soviet Union is widely considered one of the greatest international ice hockey series ever played. The final used a best-of-3 format format, with each team winning one game before the decisive third game at Copps Coliseum in Hamilton, Ontario. The games were played under international rules, 3 20-minute periods, 6 players per side, and sudden death overtime if necessary. Game 3 was marked by high tempo, end-to-end play, and exceptional skill from both sides. The Soviet Union took multiple leads, but Canada, led by Wayne Gretzky and Mario Lemieux, responded each time. The teams traded goals throughout the game, with neither able to gain a clear advantage. Late in the third period, with the score tied 5-5, Gretzky set up Lemieux for the winning goal, sealing a 6-5 victory for Canada. The game featured 12 future Hall of Famers and is remembered for its relentless pace, dramatic momentum shifts, and the sportsmanship shown between two hockey superpowers. The 1987 Canada Cup solidified international rivalries and showcased the highest level of hockey talent and competition. The 1975 Stanley Cup Playoffs, Game 7, New York Islanders vs. Pittsburgh Penguins. The 1975 Stanley Cup Playoffs featured one of the greatest comebacks in NHL history during the quarterfinals between the New York Islanders and the Pittsburgh Penguins. The series used the standard NHL playoff rules, best of 7, 3 20-minute periods per game, and sudden death overtime in case of a tie. The Penguins took a commanding 3-0 series lead, needing only one more win to advance, while the Islanders faced elimination. The Islanders began their comeback by tightening their defensive strategy and relying on strong goaltending from Glenn Resch. They won 3 straight games, forcing a decisive Game 7 in Pittsburgh. In the final game, both teams played conservatively, knowing the high stakes. Ed Westfall scored the game's only goal late in the third period, and the Islanders secured a 1-0 victory. This marked only the second time in NHL history that a team overcame a 3-0 deficit to win a playoff series. The Islanders' comeback is seen as a testament to resilience, teamwork, and strategic adaptation under pressure, and it established the franchise's reputation for playoff heroics.